Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we add some late summer color to this flower bed. So let's go. I often refer to this flower bed as the lilac bed for the simple reason that I have a big lilac tree behind me. This bed is located in my front yard, which is the west side of my house. I often struggle with what to plant in this flower bed because it's not considered full sun. However, it's also not considered full shade. Towards the front of the flower bed is creeping phlox. It's only been planted there for 2 years. It still has some time before it shows me whether or not it's going to stay in this bed. Next spring, I'm hoping I will see its true colors, and if it puts on a great show, it will stay in this bed. And if it doesn't, then I can always move it. Also in this bed are perennial mums that are a yellow color. And I recently cut them back, and I'm hoping that they won't be too leggy, but they typically have done okay in this flower bed. In this flower bed, right next to the mums, are perennial asters, which are a purple color, and those do very well in this flower bed as well. Behind the mums and the asters are Stelladoro daylilies. I had dug out every other Stelladoro daylilies because there were too many in this flower bed, and those looked really pretty during the early summer months. And then during the summer, I made a video digging out every other Stelladoro daylily and replacing it with a different kind of daylily, a kind that blooms after the Stelladoros. And those also provided a decent show for this year, but next year will look really, really pretty. Behind all of the daylilies, they're dormant right now, so you don't see them, are some daffodils, and they looked really pretty when they bloomed in the early spring months. I recently added some wax begonias that I had started from seed. They really did not fully take off because they were just added about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nevertheless, they are adding some color in this bed, which I do appreciate this time of year. And so here we are. You look at this bed and there is not a lot of color going on. I want to add some more color. I don't feel the need to have to go to a local nursery or a garden center to go shopping because I have plenty of perennials in my own yard. And this is where I want to motivate you to do what I'm doing, which is shop your own yard. Look around your yard. If you have gaps like I do in this bed right now, and I can fill them with some other flowers that are blooming in my yard, why not dig them and move them into this bed? And I know exactly which plant I want to add in this flower bed. I'm going to show you. Now, how can you miss how pretty this flower looks? It's blooming in its glory right now. It's called Black-Eyed Susan or Rudbeckia. And I told myself last year that this plant needs to be moved all around my yard for this time of year when I don't have a lot blooming in my yard right now. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be digging up a few patches of this plant and we're going to bring it down over into the other flower bed. And I can assure you that alone will make a big impact in that bed. So let's get digging. A lot of people ask me when is the best time to dig and move perennials. And what I tell everyone is right now. The key is just make sure that you are giving whatever plants you're moving around and dividing plenty of water, especially if you live in an area where it's dry, where it's hot still. Here in New Hampshire, we are finally experiencing some cooler weather. And when I say cooler weather, it's now about, I'd say, low 80-degree Fahrenheit days. So it's a perfect time. But I've been dividing and moving perennials all summer long. I've just been making sure that my perennials are getting a lot of water. And honestly, I don't care if this plant does not recover very well this year. I want it to establish its roots and I want it to look pretty for next year. So let's go ahead and bring this down to our flower bed. Let's get this planted and then we'll come back for more. Now, is there a guarantee that this plant will thrive and do well in this area? Nope, I don't know how it's going to do, but why worry about that? I have plenty of this plant in my yard and I want to see how it does. So it's worth taking the chance because I can just take pieces of it from my yard, put them here, and then I will wait and see next year, how does it look here? Does it look okay? Is it thriving? And if it's not thriving, I can always dig it out. I just wanted to move the mulch back because I don't want to ruin that. But this time of year, that's what I'm really doing now, is looking around my yard and I'm trying to add late summer interest to different areas of my yard because I'm noticing some areas look beautiful and some, quite frankly, do not. And I could go to the garden center and I could buy plants, but I have plenty to shop for right in my own yard. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. We had a lot of rain last night, so the ground is extremely saturated, which is why I'm not adding any water to the planting hole. But if you were going to do something like this and your ground was dry, definitely make sure you add water into your planting hole. You know, I wanted to do an early August garden tour, and I got looking around my yard, and certain beds like this one didn't even have much color in them. And I'm like, rather than do an early August garden tour, I'd rather do something like this where you're seeing a section of my garden, but you're also seeing what I'm doing to make it look beautiful for the late summer months. What do you think? I think this just adds a little pop of color in this flower bed, but we need more. Okay, I know you can't see the plants totally, but they are back here. Now, Rudbeckia does self-seed very readily around the yard. I don't mind it. I know some people find it a little invasive. It's very easy to dig up if it is self-seeding in your yard. So back here, I do have some plants that self-seeded. I'm going to be digging them up and bringing them down to our new area there. And I know that some of this is blooming and some of it is not blooming. It'll bloom next year. The key is to get the roots, get them established so that we have beautiful plants for next year. And that's the name of the game. That's what I tell a lot of people that come and shop at my backyard plant nursery. This time of year, you're really just trying to get plants established for next year. You're basically planning out your flower beds for the next growing season and just getting those roots established. Okay, let's get these planted and let's see what else we have to play with. It's funny how gardening works. Certain beds look really pretty at certain times of the year. But then all of a sudden, that same bed that looked really pretty might all of a sudden look kind of blah. I don't know. That happens in my yard anyway. And I'm always looking around my yard to see where does it look blah and where does it look really pretty. And where can I move plants around? Of course, we have to take into consideration if it's a sunny area or if it's a shady area. I see you, little worms. So you can see right here, I have my irrigation line, so I'm just going to have to work around it. Fortunately, the roots on this are not very deep. One thing that you want to notice with Rudbeckia when you dig it out is it has like little runners that come off of it, and those runners have roots on them. What you can do, and this is just a way to divide or propagate your Rudbeckia, is you can cut the runner off. And the main thing is it has leaves here and it has some roots there. So just keep that in mind that this is a single plant if you did want to take it and move it somewhere else in your landscape. What's nice about this type of plant is that it will spread very rapidly. You only need a small piece of it and it will take off every year after that. So remember, the goal of this project is to add color for late summer, which would be like early August. And look how pretty just adding that one patch of Rudbeckia adds to this bed. And as you go this way, you can see that that also adds a nice pop of color right there. And then this is just looking at both areas where we just planted. I think it would look pretty to add a little bit more color, the same color, just a small drift of it back over this way and another small drift of it over in here. And since we have extra pieces that we dug out, we can put those in those areas. I sold this plant to someone, actually a number of people, but a particular person on Facebook Marketplace as part of my backyard plant nursery last year. And she was very kind to send me a picture of her couple of plants that she had bought. And literally the plants that she bought last year were tiny. They were just like a small sprig of a plant. And my goodness, what a beautiful display the two plants are putting this year. And that just goes to show you how quickly Rudbeckia grows. So it doesn't really take a lot when you add it in an area of your yard. And I know that they look sad, and they may look sad for the remainder of the season. And that's just something that goes with the territory. After all, we're just planting this for the roots for next year. And any color that we get this year is an additional bonus. I'm just spending the time and I'm cutting off any little baby seedlings or runners that are on the plant just to take them off the mother plant. I mean, why not? It makes it easier just to get them put into the ground here. Okay, it looks a little sad, but they'll perk right back up and they will be fine. I'm going to do the same thing I did here on the other side of the bed, and then I'll show you what's next. That adds just a little bit of color in this bed. I could try to go all the way around, but I don't want to bother doing that because there's no guarantee that this plant is going to thrive in this area. So again, like I said, I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to see how it does. And I think if it does do well here, it will fill in very nicely in that pocket over there. And it'll fill in very nicely in that pocket over there. Now, I think I want to add another perennial that I recently bought into this bed. So let's go get that and let's see where we're going to place it. Here we have the Serendipity Allium, and you can see that it likes full sun to part sun. So I think that this plant will do very well in this location here. At first I was thinking of putting it down over in this area here, but I think it's a little too congested, a little too crowded down there. I am thinking that we're going to divide it in half and we're going to put one small clump towards this side of the lilac tree, and we'll put the other clump on the other side of the lilac tree. One of my goals with this plant is to divide it every single year because I want to really increase my stock in this plant. Now, I've never collected the seeds from it, so the other thing I'm going to try to do is see if it creates seeds for me that I can collect. And if so, then that would be great, and I can also propagate it that way. I'm all about winter sowing seeds, especially for perennials. In fact, I recently made a video showing you my process for doing that, and I can put a link to that video down in the description below. But winter sowing for me works out really well for perennials when I don't have a lot of a certain perennial. And this would be one of them. I don't have a lot of it yet. And eventually I might. And then if I have a lot of it, I definitely won't need to winter sow it at that point. All I'm doing right now is just cleaning it up because I've had this plant for a number of weeks now. So might as well take the time and just clean up the base of it. You can see it's pretty pot bound. So we're just going to try to loosen up the roots a little bit. And the reason for doing this is you want your plant to continue building its roots, and you don't want it to keep going in a circular fashion like it had been doing in the pot. You want it to build its roots outward when it's planted in the ground. And you could really use anything. I'm just using what I have on hand, which are my hand pruners. You don't want to go too crazy, just enough. I'm going to use a hand pruning saw. This one is by Krona, but there are a lot of different ones out there on the internet. And you just want to be careful because it is sharp. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for a place where I can make my cut or my division. And really, there's no great place from what I'm seeing. So I'm just going to go right down the middle and then we'll pull it apart. There. And honestly, that's all I want to do. I just want to divide it into two pieces for this year. Next spring, we can come in and divide this down even more, but I'm happy turning one plant into two plants for this year. I've been wanting ornamental onions in my yard for a number of years, so I'm really happy to finally have something to add to my landscape, and then I can propagate it and move it around over the next many years. We get a lot of snow in the winter time, and even though it would be nice to have four-season interest here, my goal in my garden is to really try to get 3 seasons of interest. I do have a lot of trees here where I live, so the trees provide quite a bit of interest on their own. Just roughing up the roots a little bit more because I want to make sure that the plant is in deep enough into the ground. Just by adding a couple of small things to a flower bed can make such a big difference. And remember, over time, these plants that we've added, we can divide and move around this bed to really get that impact that we're looking for. And part of gardening is patience. And if you have patience, you'll end up with beautiful gardens over the years. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Don't judge me. This is a no judgment channel. Yes, these are annuals. Yes, they are impatiens. Yes, I could have a frost next month. Oh well, I don't care. I still have annuals that I started from seed indoors during the winter months that never made it in the ground. I am sick of looking at them on my rolling carts. I am getting them in the ground wherever in my yard. I want color. There's no color here. I have color here. So that's what I'm doing, and I think it's going to look really pretty. Last year, I started Impatiens from seed. I do every year because I have a lot of shade, so I rely heavily on Impatiens. But last year, for whatever reason, I don't remember what the reason was, I didn't start as many Impatiens as I really wanted to. I think I only started a small handful, in fact, and it was quite depressing. So I promised myself that that wasn't going to happen again. And it was game on this year, and I started a ton of Impatiens from seed. So many that I it's not that I didn't have space or room for them. It's just that I ran out of time. Like a lot of us do when we do gardening, you just run out of time because you get busy doing other things in your yard. Well, the time has almost run out for these poor babies, and I feel bad. So I'm getting them in the ground. They're very leggy. I'm not even going to bother cutting them back. I don't care at this point. And they will be fine. They're going to put on a great show up until a frost gets them. And quite honestly, I was thinking about what to put under this tree. I was thinking about hosta, but then I'm like, nope, I'm not doing hosta because the deer will just mow them down. I thought about heuchera, and well, I do have a lot of heuchera in my yard. I could dig them up, but why bother digging up heuchera from the yard when I have all these impatiens that really need to get in the ground? I can always do heuchera next year, but for this year, I said, nope, I'm just going to get these impatiens under here and let them do whatever it is that they want to do. And since I have so many of them, you better believe I'm going to be packing them under this tree. I have so many impatiens that they actually went to seed, and now I have baby impatiens coming up. And no, I'm not going to plant all these little baby impatiens. If I lived somewhere way south like Florida, I might do that. This is New Hampshire. Again, we could have a frost next month. It's so not worth it to do that. It's probably so not worth it to do this, but I'm doing this. But I know based on when I put a post out there recently that I am not the only one that has annuals that need to get in the ground. So I have no shame about this whatsoever. It happens. I know that we all have fallen victim to that. An area close by to here where we planted impatiens looks so pretty, and I really have been enjoying it this year. And that's motivating me. I'm like, okay, well, then this area is going to look equally as pretty in a few weeks. All right, let me finish getting all these impatiens in because you've seen what I just did. I'm just basically moving the mulch aside, digging a hole, plunking an impatiens in the ground, and then putting the dirt back, putting the mulch back. I'm going to keep going, and I'll show you how everything looks when I'm all done. You know what I like about planting annuals this time of year? It just makes me happy. It gives a pop of color. And also, it will give me the idea of whether or not these plants will thrive here. And if they do, next year, my goal is to get plants like these, like the impatiens, into the ground right after Memorial Day weekend, which is my average last frost date. And I think that will look really pretty if that fills up that area next year. So this year is my test year. Over the next month, I'm going to see how these plants do in this location. And based on that, I'll decide if next year I want to add them as a permanent fixture in this flower bed. I don't want to go overboard with adding plants to this bed, but I do have some sedum that I dug up from other areas of my yard and I divided. There are two different colors here, or two different varieties, I should say. Most of them are this one here, and I think they're Autumn Joy sedum. And then you can see a few on that side there that have more of a reddish purple colored stem. I'm going to add those as well into this flower bed, but I know where I can get more of that sedum in another area of my yard, and then I can add those into this flower bed on a different day. I think adding the sedum in between the Rudbeckia over here as well as the Allium over here will look really pretty. Again, with these plants, time will tell. I'm not sure how much sun I'm going to get in this bed. I know that sedum require a lot of sun, but it's worth giving it a try. So I'm only going to plant 3 over here of this variety or this color, and I'll plant 3 on the other side to mimic this side. I used to not love sedum. I don't know why. I just didn't. But the more I see it in other people's gardens, I've realized I do like sedum a lot. And I think part of the reason why I like sedum, other than the fact that they do have a really cool leaf to them, is because they bloom later in the summer. And I'm really starting to learn to appreciate plants that bloom pretty much anytime after August. And that's a huge reason why I wanted to make this video, is to hopefully inspire you to think the same way, to look around your own gardens and really look at what's blooming and what areas are lacking in color. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, I really wanted to make a garden tour, and hopefully I get to it. But I was a little sad about certain areas like this one that just were lacking color. And I thought, what better way to show a part of my garden than by adding some interest and adding some color to it, so that next year I'm a little bit happier with this space. Now these sedum are pretty small. I divided them down to a single plant, and they don't have a ton of buds on them. So the main thing for these plants, again, is to get them established in hopes that they put on a great show for next year. And I'm willing to wait for that. I think that's what makes budget gardeners a budget gardener, is being able to be patient and wait. If I wanted instant gratification with my plants all over my yard, that can get very expensive quickly. So I think it's important to remind ourselves that it's okay sometimes to wait. That's actually, in a way, too, a beautiful thing, to be able to plant something and know that it might not put on a show for 1, maybe even 2 years. But when it does put on that beautiful show, it was worth the wait. I know I have daffodils planted in this bed somewhere in this area here. We'll find out in the springtime where they are. And if we have to relocate any daffodils, we can do it then. That's probably something else that used to hold me back with planting, is knowing that in certain areas I have spring bulbs, and that, oh, I might not want to plant in a certain area because what if that spring bulb is planted there? Well, it's okay. If it's planted somewhere in here and it looks weird in the springtime, it can always be addressed at that time. I've mentioned this in a few other videos, but right above this flower bed are a few tree limbs that are basically hanging over and shading this bed. And when Mr. Budget Gardener and I have some time, we're planning on trimming those back. And optimally, we should be doing that well before the leaves fall, because we want to be able to see the branches really well that are providing shade in this bed. And that's something else I encourage you, especially if you live in an area like I do, where you have a lot of trees. It's okay to cut back some trees in order to add more sun to a shady location. After all, a lot of my yard is a shady location. So if I want to have sun, then some trees need to be cut back. I'm going to go ahead and add the same sedum that we just planted over to this side of the bed. And then towards the center of the bed, I'm going to plant the sedum that has more of the purplish colored stem. It's a great time of year to be adding color to your beds where color is lacking, to start planning for next year. If you don't like something, change it. And I'm really happy with the changes that we made to this flower bed. It went from blah to kind of pretty now. And that makes me really happy. What also makes me happy is getting some of these annuals in the ground. And we'll see how these plants do. The sedum are still quite small, so they'll put on growth for this year, and then they should put on a better show next year. And the Rudbeckia might look sad. The key right now is just for them to put on growth with their roots. Plus, I think tomorrow they'll perk right back up, to be honest with you. I hope this video inspired you and motivated you. Maybe it gave you some ideas of things you can try in your own landscape. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.